Recently, a friend gifted me this Crest ultrasonic cleaning tank, and I've been interested in getting a Crest tank for some time, so I was really excited to try it out. However, I soon realized that this tank only had a heater and transducers. Crest's industrial cleaners like this one require a separate external ultrasonic generator, unlike their benchtop models that come with everything built in. There's so little information available about this whole line of cleaners online that I thought it would be helpful to share some of the things that I've learned along the way. I'll also give an initial assessment of whether a setup like this makes any sense for a hobbyist whatsoever. Crest has been making ultrasonic cleaners since 1961. Computer repair hobbyists might have first heard of them through Louis Rossmann, who used one in his shop and resold their benchtop models for quite a while though. Crest ultrasonic cleaners are known for their excellent materials, build quality, and quality control. They also happen to be made in USA. So they seem like a great choice for pros, but I've been curious if a system like this provides any substantial value to a hobbyist like me compared to inexpensive generic tanks that you'll find all over Amazon or AliExpress. So starting with the tank, this is model 4HT1014-6. It's made of 316L bright annealed stainless steel with welded and ground corners. It's equipped with 40 kilohertz transducers designed for more aggressive cleaning on less sensitive parts. There are other models that run at higher frequencies for more sensitive parts. From the model number, I think there are 6 of them, but haven't opened up the tank to confirm that. The tank has a heater with a temperature range of approximately 60 degrees to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. It has a little riser inside, a basket that sits on top of that, and a lid that covers the top of the system. It also has 3/4 inch fittings at the top and bottom for filling and draining, and the manual mentions that there are some optional accessories available like a recirculating filter, but I couldn't find any details or information on how to order that sort of thing. The tank is 10 by 14 by 10 inches deep, really big. You can fit quite large boards in there. For the vintage Mac stuff that I repair, this fits pretty much any board. The Mac 2 board maybe not, or it might need to be on a diagonal, but I put like a Mac portable board in here recently, which is quite large, and it fits long ways just fine. So you could fit like a bunch of boards at a time if you wanted to. So like SE30, you could probably clean, I don't know, 10 boards or something like that all at the same time if you really wanted to. Here's a SE30 board just to show for the size. So there's one. You could fit probably actually more than 10. A lot of boards that will fit in here. The front panel is very simple. It just has a light that indicates whether the heater is on, and a knob to adjust the temperature. Unfortunately, in my case, that knob's missing, so I'll need to replace it. The back side of the tank just has an AC cord coming out the back and a coaxial cable that connects to the generator. So as for that generator, initially this tank would have been sold with this generator that you see here, which is the 4G 500-6 500 watt generator. But the question to me was like, why would there be a separate generator at all? That just seemed a little unexpected. And Crest doesn't really explain this on their website or their printed materials, but a couple of things seemed kind of obvious when I started looking at the other things that they sell. One is that separating the tank from the generator makes servicing one or the other much easier and reduces downtime. If a generator dies, you just have to have one at the ready, you swap in. And the way the generator is constructed makes that possible in less than a minute. You can completely change the guts of the generator in just a couple of screw turns, and swapping the tank out the generator out is very, very simple. This tank is relatively small. This one's 5 gallons. We'll get into that, but but Crest makes them huge tanks that have dozens of transducers. And for those setups, you just add more of these generators to create a battery, like a stack of Lego bricks. The generator itself is quite simple. The rear features a BNC connector for output to the tank, an AC cord, and a T8A fuse. The front has a power switch with an LED built in and a knob to adjust the intensity of the transducers. But it also has two captive screws, which when loosened, the entire module will slide out from the case, separating it from the AC connection. That design makes it super easy to do maintenance. Like I was mentioning earlier, you just, those two screws, the whole thing slides out. And inside the module are several circuit boards that are easily accessible and removable, and all the components are through-hole and seem to be quite high quality. So I'll just take a second and show you what I mean. So these two screws are captive. You take those two screws out and the whole thing slides out. What's interesting here is the whole thing just slides out of and into a backplane. So the AC connection stays attached to the chassis, but everything else just slides out. So if you imagine you have a giant tank and it has a dozen of these different generators and one of them goes bad, you could just have one at the ready. You just pull the whole thing, swap in a working one, and then you can work on this offline or send it off for warranty repair or whatever they do with them. And then again, on the inside, it's really straightforward. You have the fuse. This switch is to off gas, so it runs the transducers at a half frequency, I think. And the intent is to off gas the liquid to make the cavitation more effective. The manual gets into that. Upper board and a lower board. So lower board is power supply stuff. There's a couple components below that, like a filter and the transformer or a transformer, and everything else is on that power board above. And then a few other elements on the upper board, which looks like some MOSFETs and a little bit of circuitry for running the transducers, including a couple of trim pots, which the manual talks about, of like, this is how you would adjust to dial in the frequency of the transducers, but then it also goes on to say, don't do that yourself because you're not going to have the test equipment to verify everything is running as it should. I mentioned there's a fuse at the back that's easily user accessible, and then there's a second one on the board here. Maybe there's others hiding elsewhere. We'll get into it later. This arrived with no fuse on the back, meaning there was a problem with it, but this one was installed and was just fine. Okay, I'm gonna put this back together. So one other thing you can see on the front, maybe it's a little occluded by the angle of the camera, but the front of the unit says that it has true sweep, which the documentation just says that it's a feature that eliminates inconsistent cleaning by sweeping a plus or minus 1 kilohertz signal around the center frequency at a set repetitive rate. So I think other ultrasonic cleaners might do that, but maybe that was some of Crest's secret sauce earlier on that made them special. The tank, which is on the left, that I received didn't come with this generator, didn't have a generator with it. Used generators are available, but they are quite expensive, even for very old and very worn examples. The cheapest generator that I found, which was this one, was in really, really poor condition. It was described as not powering on and just gross. It was completely filled with crud and dust and all sorts of nastiness from whatever environment it was used in. And they were still asking $300 for this. All the other options at the time that I was searching were substantially more expensive. Most of them were sold as is, no returns, and the seller, if they said anything, they would say, oh, I don't have the equipment to test it, which is, probably code for it is unlikely to work. So anything confirmed that was tested and working or was returnable was even more expensive. These things could get well over $1,000 just for the generator. And they'd still be old. A lot of them still didn't look that great. And it just seemed like a gamble no matter what. So for this one, I figured it was worth a shot. We went back and forth with the seller, ended up paying $170 for this one, and just crossed my fingers that it wouldn't be that big a deal to get it working. And aside from the superficial chips, which you can see all over the paint on the front panel, it actually cleaned up really well. There was a lot of gross stuff on it, and technically I could paint it or something, but it's fine. It looks fine. It just has a lovely patina to it. Like I mentioned earlier, it was missing a fuse. When I did install one, it immediately blew when I powered it on. So I pulled it apart and I looked at that power supply board on the lower side of the lower part of the generator, and sure enough, on the bridge rectifier there was one diode that was short. It was a GI756, just in case you happen to run into the same issue. GI756, it was really hard to read on the diode itself, but that's what it was. They were readily available. I actually got it from Amazon because I could get quick shipping. I was able to replace that without even removing the board. Everything was so accessible, I didn't even have to bother taking out the board. Got the old one out, new one in, and once done, the thing fired right up. Just to compare to the 10-liter unit I was using before, which is big enough, like a lot of stuff could be cleaned in this one. You can see it's like more than double the size. It's quite big, and it can fit a lot of stuff. And they make all sorts of different size tanks that are off the shelf that you can get, but this is the biggest one that you can get that's pre-built, that doesn't require 240 volt power. So this one works off of 120 volt. So just a little comparison for the little tank that I just showed, the 10-liter tank. This unit, like what I ended up paying for the generator and fixing it up, was the same price that I paid for that 10-liter generic unit from Amazon. And this one is much larger. It's built like a tank and is potentially a lot more powerful. We're going to test that out. One significant aspect that's missing, though, is that this system, compared to my previous tank, it doesn't have a timer. So you have to either just manually turn it on and off or integrate a timer in line with the generator yourself. And it looks like Crest used to make these at some point. I don't know that they do anymore. I found used one on eBay, but it's really, there's not much to it. It's just a literal like mechanical timer dial wired up to a little terminal block so that you have AC coming in, the timer controlling whether the output is on or not, and then the output goes to the tank. For now, let's see if this setup will effectively clean boards better than the generic tank that I was using previously. All right, time to experiment. So both tanks are filled with 2 gallons of reverse osmosis water, so not distilled, but RO water, because that's what I have handy. The Crest tank is brand new, so there's really nothing contaminating it. The old tank had also been cleaned out prior to this, but I've used it a bunch, and it had probably a little bit of soap detergent kind of residue left in it, but pretty similar between the two. I've cut a piece of aluminum foil to very similar size for both. I'm gonna try to get the foil as close to the bottom of each tank as possible so that it's as close to the transducers as feasible. So we're just going to let them rip for 5 minutes and see if anything looks different between the two. So I'm going to start right now. All right, so here's another comparison of the two. On the left is the piece that was inside of the older generic 10-liter ultrasonic cleaner, and the one on the right is the Crest. And it should be pretty obvious which one did a little bit better. The Crest is just unbelievable how much material it took off. And it even started to like shear this piece of foil. I hadn't torn that, or it wasn't bent. For some reason, it just like caused this fault line in the foil that was just tearing apart, I guess, where it was placed and where it was touching on the transducers. So overall, I'm thrilled about this. This means that the Crest tank is not only bigger and better built than the one I was using previously, but it does a substantially better job. So shorter time to clean stuff, more effective cleaning, that's awesome. So I was really lucky. I ended up getting the system extremely cheap. It made good sense for me, for my uses. I was happy to spend the little bit of money and time that I did getting it working. For most hobbyists, again, even though this is so much better than the generic cleaner, it wouldn't make sense for a hobbyist unless you can get it extremely cheap, because when the generic tank works fine. I've been using it for a long time and clean boards okay. So for a hobby use, totally fine. And it's even a luxury, right? Like you could sit there with a toothbrush and isopropyl alcohol, and in most cases you'll clean as well as you need to. In some cases you need better cleaning for capacitor fluid and other stuff that might be causing you a problem that you can't see and you can't clean. So for that, any ultrasonic cleaner is going to be great. But I do a lot of this work. I repair probably something like 1 to 200 boards per year. So for me, even though this is a hobby and it's a luxury, having a cleaner that does a substantially better job is great, but it's great at the price that I paid for it. I wouldn't pay $6,200 for it new. I wouldn't pay whatever the market rate is for the used working ones, at $1,500 or more, whatever they go for. But if I found one for less than a few $100s, I would probably go for it again, because this is just night and day. It's awesome. So I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, just please leave me a comment and I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. I'm no expert in this stuff, obviously, but there's just so little information about these things online that I thought this could be somewhat helpful. All right, thanks. Cheers. Bye.